Good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you might be. My name is Kevin Michael Grace, and this is the KMG Show for Wednesday, December the 15th, 2021. Um, Anyone in the chat, you could help me out by letting me know whether you can hear me. My microphone has the red light on, but it did last night, and people weren't hearing me. So I rebooted my computer with the hope that that would fix the problem, but we'll see. Loud and clear. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Thank you so much. So let's talk about the Biden gerontocracy, or just America's gerontocracy. I'll begin with a story from Breitbart by Charlie Spearing. President Joe Biden joked about inflation and supply chain disruptions on Wednesday. Yes, just as he was laughing when asked about COVID deaths. Biden was asked by a South Carolina local news anchor, News 19's Darcy Strickland, in an interview about whether inflation and supply chain would be a problem for Christmas shoppers. Well, they're not going to be. You're gonna. The problem is they're going to be available. It's going to cost you money. It's going to cost Santa some money, Biden said with a chuckle. Apparently, Joe Biden is now so out of it, he doesn't know how Santa Claus works. Biden blamed inflation on supply chain disruptions, but claimed he had already made progress on the issue. We still have to do more, but there's significantly more product out there for people to be able to go and buy their Christmas gifts, he said. The president also commented on December the 1st there was no way he could guarantee that Americans would be able to get the gifts they needed for Christmas. I can't promise that every person will get every gift they want on time, Biden said. Only Santa Claus can keep that promise. It's one of the markers of passing, from childhood to adulthood, that one understands that Santa Claus is a myth, right? Has Joe Biden really regressed to the stage where he thinks that Santa Claus is real and that the reason that things are so expensive is because of a vast expansion of the monetary supply, as was determined definitively in the 1970s and late 1970s and early 1980s. This is from Brandon Gillespie at Fox News. New York Times columnist Brett Stevens, their conservative columnist, very satirical, on Tuesday implored President Biden to not seek re-election in 2024 and announce his intentions as soon as possible so potential Democratic contenders could begin making preparations to replace him. Golly, it's almost as if this conservative Brett Stevens fellow loves the Democratic Party. In a piece headlined, Biden should not run again, and he should say he won't, Stevens, a conservative and strong critic of Donald Trump, argued that Biden's age, as well as his seemingly uneven cognitive state, needed to be candidly discussed because it wasn't healthy for him, his office, the Democratic Party, or the country to remain in limbo about what to do if he decides not to run. I should point out that the next presidential election is not until November 2024, and it is now December 2021. But I guess presidential campaigns are pretty much continuous now. Stevens also argued it would be liberating for Biden's presidency if he announced he wouldn't run, and that it would energize a currently listless Democratic Party. Is it a good idea for Joe Biden to run for election in 2024, Stevens wrote? And if he runs again and wins, would it be good for the United States to have a president who is 86, the age Biden would be at the end of a second term? I put these questions bluntly because they need to be discussed candidly, not just whispered constantly, unquote. Stevens noted that it was fair game for reporters to question former President Ronald Reagan's age in the 1980s, after he took office at the age of 69 and won re-election in his 70s, but that it had somehow become horrible manners to raise similar concerns about Biden, who turned 79 last month. Well, I remember watching Ronald Reagan debate Walter Mondale in 1984, and things were getting really hairy at the end of the debate. Reagan started telling a story about driving on the Pacific Coast Highway late at night, And I started to panic, thinking, where is this story going? His mind is clearly slipping. Thankfully, the debate ran out of time before Reagan could reveal what the point of his Pacific Coast Highway story was. But wait, salvation awaits. This is from Joe Concha at The Hill. Hillary 2024. Given the competition, she may be the Dems' best hope. Oh, I don't know. I think I predicted this a couple of days ago. She gave this speech. She gave her victory speech in 2016, last week. And then all of her fans, all of her stanners said, why are people laughing at this? Well, you can't figure out why people are laughing at this. If Hillary really intends to run for president in 2024, she should start losing weight now because she has become huge, just huge. There may not be a rematch coming in the 2024 race for the White House, but we're not talking, God help us, Biden, Trump, too. Instead, 2016 Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton is an interesting prospect to consider when looking for a viable candidate, particularly if an 80-something President Biden decides not to seek a second term. And why would he? Just 22% of voters want him to seek a second term, according to an I&I tip poll. It doesn't get much better when polling only Democrats, where just 36% want to see the president run again, with that juggernaut candidate named someone else coming in first with 44% support. The Democratic bench is about as deep as the New York Jets these days. Vice President Harris, she's at 28% approval per USA Today. Former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, no longer governor and thoroughly disgraced. Governor Gavin Newsom, he had to spend major time and resources just to avoid being ousted in deep blue California during a recall election earlier this year. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, not even 40 years old, and he has a supply chain crisis on his resume. Senator Bernie Sanders, Senator Elizabeth Warren, Senator Cory Booker. If those are the options, why not Hillary? She's 74 years old, which is like being bathed in the fountain of youth compared to Biden. And she's still stunned 5 years later that she actually lost to Donald Trump. In fact, she sounds no different than Trump in constantly complaining about all the reasons she lost, and that, well, the election was stolen by Trump and the Russians anyway. That type of rhetoric is a big no-no for Trump, but A-okay if Hillary or Stacey Abrams does it. Rules are rules. Are we going to give in to all these lies and this disinformation and this organized effort to undermine our rule of law and our institutions, or are we going to stand up to it? Clinton recently warned regarding the possibility of Trump taking back the White House. And yes, that's a real possibility. Several recent polls have Trump topping Biden in a hypothetical 2024 contest, which is stunning considering that the Democrat received more votes last year than any other presidential candidate in American history, 81 million. Yes, absolutely. That is absolutely true and not at all made up. One more possible sign that Hillary is dipping her toe in the 2024 pool comes in the form of her bizarre decision to read her 2016 victory speech for something called Masterclass. It was one of the most cringeworthy things you'll ever see. Here we have a former First Lady, Senator, Secretary of State, and Democratic presidential nominee reading a speech for an election she lost. Of course, if the New York Times gave me an 85% chance of winning an election and I somehow lost to a guy who had never run for public office before, I'd have trouble absorbing it too. Since the election, Hillary has blamed her loss on misogyny, misogyny and sexism. That's quite a potent combination. Voter ID laws, Bernie Sanders, former FBI Director James Comey, and Matt Lauer, along with dozens of other factors. She hasn't blamed neglecting to campaign in Wisconsin or deciding "I'm with her" was a grabby campaign slogan. It's a 5-year public therapy session in broad daylight, and in an insane world, she would have been laughed out of the room for reading such a speech. But this felt more like a trial balloon in an effort to see if there's still an appetite for the Clinton brand. Kamala Harris was supposed to be Biden's plan B. She was supposed to be set up to be the first female president in our nation's history. But it's not working out for the Beep, who is already seeing senior staff members jump ship at an alarming rate, presumably thanks to her poor polling, or perhaps due to the fact, this is me speaking, that nobody likes her. Joe Concha at The Hill concludes Hillary Clinton always seemed to believe the mantle of first female president was her birthright. And given how pathetic the field is on the Democratic side, with or without Joe Biden, she may just get a second chance at winning the office her husband so famously made infamous. Well, speaking for myself, I can hardly wait. Run, Hillary, run. This is, again from The Hill, this is by Lexi Lones. Republicans are standing by former President Trump for a 2024 presidential run, while most Democrats want President Biden to run again, according to a new Political Morning Consult poll. Really? Most Democrats want Biden to run again? The poll found 60% of Democrats want Biden to run for re-election, while 69% of Republicans want Trump to take another shot at the presidency. A 2024 rematch does not seem that far out of reach, as Trump has teased a 2024 bid multiple times in the past few months. And who else might be interested in running for president? This just gets better and better. This is from Jeff Poore at Breitbart. Fox News Channel's Tucker Carlson opened his Tuesday program with a scathing attack on Representative Liz Cheney for her antics on the House Democrats' January 6th committee. He began, if you live in Manchester, New Hampshire, first of all, congratulations. It is a really nice place. But second, we thought we'd give you an explanation for what you may have just seen. So if you live there and last month you thought you saw Liz Cheney wandering around downtown Manchester, no, you were not hallucinating. Liz Cheney was there, and that's pretty weird if you think about it. Not a lot of people go to Manchester, New Hampshire in November, so it probably wasn't a family vacation, nor is it likely that Liz Cheney went up there by accident. Manchester is an 8-hour drive from her home in the DC suburbs. And more to the point, it is also 8 hours from these CNN studios in downtown Washington that she inhabits more often than most of us go to church, and much more reverently. Manchester is also, not that it matters to her, more than 2,000 miles from Wyoming. That's the state that she supposedly represents in the U.S. Congress. So the question is, what was Liz Cheney doing in Manchester, New Hampshire? And of course, there is only one conceivable answer. Liz Cheney plans to run for president of the United States. Now, if that sounds demented, yes, because it is, but it is also real. Now, you may be wondering, if Liz Cheney were to run for president, what exactly would she run on? She doesn't like Trump, okay, but what would her platform be? We know the answer to that because Liz Cheney only cares about one thing and one thing ever has, and that is starting pointless wars in faraway countries. The more pointless the war, the farther away, the better it is. Droning peasants makes Liz Cheney feel powerful. It's been the great cause of her life, but you've got to ask, do a lot of voters agree with her on that? Is there a massive national constituency for more Iraqi invasions? We've seen the polling on that. In a word, no. There is not a massive national constituency for Liz Cheney's foreign policy views, just the opposite, in fact. People who live outside of D.C. do not support more pointless wars that do nothing for the United States or its core interests. They are not eager to send their kids to die for Eastern Ukraine. And the reason they're not is because they've already done it. They fought a lot of wars like this because Liz Cheney told them to, and they've had enough. And Tucker Carlson says, yet apparently Liz Cheney is the last person who doesn't know this. She has literally no idea. She believes she has a shot at the Republican nomination for president. She believes that fervently enough to fly to Manchester, New Hampshire in the middle of November. Well, I have been to Manchester, New Hampshire. I spent, the greater part of a month there in February of 1980, where I was a volunteer worker for the Ronald Reagan campaign in New Hampshire. And my word, it is cold in Manchester, New Hampshire in February. The wind comes off the river, and I had not been so cold for decades. Well, it's quite a sacrifice Liz Cheney is making. Oh, we have some news from Seattle, and again, this is nothing to see here. Just just business. Standard operating procedure. This is from Como News, which is the ABC affiliate in Seattle. New data released Monday by the King County Elections Office shows that the effort to recall Seattle City Councilwoman Kashama Sawant from office was faltering as the number of no votes increased by an additional 60 votes, giving that side a 309 vote lead over those who voted yes. Oh no, look, more ballots. No, wait, even more ballots. Kashama Sawant, I suppose, is the result of Seattle now becoming a colony of India. Born in 1973 in Pune, India. Oh, a middle-class Tamil Brahmin family. Yes, that's what America needs, more Tamil Brahmins telling Americans what to do. And let's go to the chat. Hello to Lamprey Milt, who says, run, 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 Hillary. Hello to Anron, Picasso 88, Dan and Dawn from Beyond. No Sleep Till Breezewood, Pennsylvania says 2016 Part 2, directed by Ghana Bollywood, Gollywood. Yo Mama says the governor of Ohio is the oldest we've ever had. No Sleep says, wow, can't believe the people who laughed over if you like your doctor, you can keep him. Think inflation is also funny. St. Nicholas is real. Deniers have been warned, says No Sleep. Hello to William Hicks. So Hilly is thinking of doing her version of a 68 Nixon, and I thought we wouldn't have her to kick around any more. Of course, Nixon narrowly lost for president in 1960. Can I say that there were serious charges that the election was stolen based on skullduggery in Cook County, Illinois, and in Texas? Nixon certainly thought so, but he said in his book, Six Crises, that he didn't want to make a thing about it because it would not be good for national unity. Then he ran for governor of California in 1962 and lost to Jerry Brown's father, and afterwards he made the famous comment, you won't have Dick Nixon to kick around anymore. And then he practiced law in New York City at Covington for 6 years and burnished his reputation as a moderate that the Republicans would welcome after the disaster of Barry Goldwater's run in 1964. Picasso says, I thought the Hill Dog would be dead by now. She's not in the best of health. Hello to Red Sulfur, who says, plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose. Who else do we have here? Hello to Oscar Toe. Want to sign up for the Hillary Masterclasses with me? Red Sulfur says, who says we don't have a Politburo, a Perma Bureau? Mansplaining in 5 words. How else will they learn, says Picasso 88. Is Liz Cheney insane, asks Oscar Toe. The way America is going, says Red Sulfur, might as well have Cardi B as president. Okay. Hello to John S. William Hicks says Seattle is turning into a cesspool of homeless, the San Francisco of the Northwest. It's a real shame to me because I spent a lot of time in Seattle in my life, and I quite liked it. But now it's just, starting from downtown and radiating outwards. It's just like Vancouver. It is full of crazy, dangerous people. And I guess, the authorities have decided, no, what's wrong with having your downtown and adjacent areas dominated by crazy homeless people? Popcasso 88 says going to watch The Eyes of Laura Mars after the stream. Okay. Chogokin666 says, saw footage of French riot police being overrun and severely beaten in an anti-mandate protest. Chogokin666 also says, also saw German police arresting Santa Claus for not wearing a mask. Not even kidding. Popgasco88 asked KMG, did you hear about the litter box story from a Prince Edward Island high school? No, I did not. Is that something that I should look up? Prince Edward Island, for foreigners, is Canada's Toy Town province. Not very many people live there at all. But let's see if I can find something about the litter box. Rumors about students identifying as cats. What? What? Okay, this is from, this goes back from October this year. Rumors about students identifying as cats are rooted in hate, says PEI Public Schools branch. Litter boxes will not be put in schools on PEI to accommodate students who identify as cats, the public school branch says. You read that right, as strange as that may sound to some. Director Norbert Carpenter said he felt the need to issue a public statement to address misinformation circulating within the school system and on social media. I had a lot of concern about this because it was becoming a distraction to the learning and teaching at some of our schools, he said in an interview. A lot of people thought this was a joke. It's not a joke. And here is a tweet from the public schools branch of PEI. For several months now, the public schools branch has fielded calls, been sent emails, and been pointed to numerous social media posts that make broad, sweeping assertions regarding students who identify as cats. I can't imagine anyone making broad, sweeping assertions about students who identify as cats. Many of these assertions claim that schools have or are in the process of having litter boxes placed in schools. This claim, as well as many others, are simply false and are causing unnecessary stress to students and staff. Okay, yes. You know, I said Toy Town province. Well, there we go. What are we going to talk about now? This is, no, that's an old story. Oh, yes, I'll get to Ontario shortly. At the American Thinker, Monica Showalter asks, what do migrant surges and smash and grab lootings have in common? The sudden appearance of smash and grab mass lootings has left a lot of people perplexed. After all, who the hell would do that sort of thing? We know that such people are aware that they won't be punished, but that isn't the full story. Most of us wouldn't do that kind of thing no matter what the incentives. We're the kind of people who will return an extra dollar to a store clerk because honesty is natural and compassion is our way of life. We don't want the clerk's drawer to come up short at the end of the day. We live our social capital. The people who engage in organized smash and grab lootings have an entirely unrecognizable mentality. Sure, they're likely fatherless, and sure, they're likely religionless with zero exposure to morality. It's natural to wonder if these people were raised by wolves and kept in some sort of den to come out like vampires now that Chesa Boudin is running the district attorney's shop in San Francisco. The phenomenon doesn't add up. Actually, because basic absence of morality brought on by social chaos and the knowledge that one will never be punished for one's crime, there's an intermediate cause, an activator of these mobby crimes. According to The Hill, citing the Wall Street Journal, police say that some of the smash and grab robberies that recently took place in California and Minnesota were organized on social media and were carried out by people who did not know each other. Local law enforcement said robberies at a Bay Area Nordstrom, a San Francisco Louis Vuitton, and a Minneapolis Best Buy were all organized on social media. For the people who took part in some of the incidents in California, Snapchat was used to organize the crime, as thieves were possibly attracted to the app's ability to make messages disappear. Once law enforcement arrested some suspects, they at times did not know the names or have any information about the people with whom they were working. As Showalter comments, and yes, indeed, these people are out there and they are activated by social media, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, TikTok, and others, openly slavering to be included in these loot fests, all made possible by social media. And here's one tweet. How am I going to say this? N-word be broke okay. New York City, I say we start at Soho around 10. Please, LMK. Jenny, a girl from Fourth, and then there's a bunch of Chinese characters. Footage of Louis Vuitton in Union Square of San Francisco getting emptied. Look at how chill they are. I could have physically been able to do this. Call me next time. The posts are still up, with Twitter continuing to focus on right-wingers to censor, not the braves of the wannabe looters asking for someone to put them on a list to call so they can go smash and grab a fancy retailer for free designer goods. Facebook and Snapchat have been named in the reports too, and apparently it's the new in thing. Not too long ago, another social media outfit, TikTok, was the vehicle of choice for random attacks on educators called Slap a Teacher Challenge. Overseas this year, Palestinian terrorists initiated a comparable Slap a Jew TikTok challenge, copycatting the revolting 2015 knockout game targeting Jews in New York, with attacks from behind which also emerged from the social media swamp. And though I have not found the entire trail of evidence yet, I bet money that the violent random attacks on Asians going on in deep blue cities are also social media, as well as a YouTube generated. It fixed the sick pattern. I wonder if the writer here, Monica Showalter, is familiar with World Star Hip Hop. Yeah, I don't know. I feel rather cautious about recommending that to her. It might wrinkle her brain. If you're not familiar with this, it's been common on World Star for years for Black Americans to film themselves beating usually helpless people and then and chanting World Star, and then they post it to World Star for the delight and delectation of that site's audience. And oh yes, this is from Tyler Olson at Fox News. Nancy Pelosi slams attitude of lawlessness in San Francisco, says, I don't know where it comes from. You don't? She decried Wednesday recent crime waves, including organized retail theft in San Francisco and elsewhere in the U.S., as outrageous, and decried an attitude of lawlessness she said is behind it. Pelosi made the comments when asked about recent comments from San Francisco Mayor London Breed, yes, that is actually her name, who is pushing a renewed effort to change course on how we public safety. Sorry, that's what it actually says. This is apparently that this is in quotes, quote, change course on how we public safety, unquote. Did she actually say that? It's absolutely outrageous. Obviously, it can't continue, Pelosi said. What do you mean it can't continue? If you're not going to do anything about it. And I just like the mayor wading into this controversy. Well, I don't know. I'm just the mayor of San Francisco. It's not that not like I could do anything about it. Yes. And this is from Joel Pollack at Breitbart. San Francisco Mayor London Breed drops defund the police, calls bullshit on progressive police policies. Oh, okay. All right. Well, it's nice to see that this woman is capable of being persuaded. And let's look at some tweets here. Let me bring this one up. Just give me a second. Oh, yes, this is from the American Populist Union. To prove that Patrick Buchanan truly was right from the beginning, here's a list of times he warned you years in advance of the problems that conservatives face today. Pat Buchanan warned Republicans of the globalist agenda of George H.W. Bush in 1991. Quote, he's a globalist and we are nationalists. He would put America's wealth and power at the service of some vague new world order, unquote. From 1992, we are losing industries. Where is the plan to make America first again in manufacturing? From 2002, he said of the proposed invasion of Iraq, once in Baghdad, how do we get out? to destroy Saddam's weapons, to democratize, defend, and hold Iraq together, U.S. troops will be tied down for decades. He said this about immigration in 2004. If the Republican Party does not do something about mass immigration will do something about the GOP, turn it into a permanent minority. He wrote about the military in 2010. The Naval Academy is racially discriminating against hundreds of white students every year. The Navy only seems to be following the Ivy League tradition. And the American Populist Union concludes, so yeah, America really should have listened to Pat Buchanan decades ago. You know, Pat Buchanan is a rather gentle man. I mean, he's a lit. He is, cultivated and civilized, and he was mocked as a barbarian when he ran for president. So what did America get instead? They got Donald Trump, which is pretty amusing the way that turned out. Here is a tweet from RipX4 Nutmeg. Two productions, West Side Story and Cowboy Bebop, have both been remade and released with huge marketing budgets in recent days. Both now have a central transgender character, which has been celebrated by the media. Both have been total flops. And yes, I couldn't be happier about that. You heard that there's a Saved by the Bell reboot. And of course, there's a trans character in that because, of course, that's what America wants to see. More on this subject from John Nolte at Breitbart. Director Steven Spielberg's woke West Side Story remake is a box office catastrophe expected to open in the $10 million range. How awful is that? Well, do you remember the previous woke catastrophe, In the Heights? It opened to $11.5 million. West Side Story is projected to bomb harder than In the Heights. Even so, In the Heights' production budget was only $55 million. West Side Story cost $100 million to produce and probably as much to promote. Now we get to my favorite part, Nolte writes, the part where all the Hollywood media suck-ups fire off their lame excuses to appease their studio masters. THR, the Hollywood Reporter, wrote, so far moviegoers over the age of 35 are the most leery in terms of returning to theaters. That's what you all said about No Time to Die, which opened to a disappointing $55 million. It seems to me that if the older skewing No Time to Die could open to $55 million, West Side Story could do the same. Deadline, of course, is always the biggest whore in this department. Here are 5 excuses jammed into 3 sentences. Aside from opening in a marketplace where adults are still cautious, 1, because of COVID, West Side Story biggest hurdle as of this minute are holiday season 2 distractions, i.e. shopping parties. Typically, the 3 only movies showing any signs of life before Christmas are event titles like Jumanji, The Next Level, and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. 4, can't exactly expect big grosses for an adult demo musical, which is a remake of a Hollywood classic, and 5, before Christmas, even pre-pandemic. Nolte comments, no shame, none. Riddle me this, you brown-nosing hacks. Weren't all these factors apparent before you predicted a box office haul of 12 to 17 million? And let's not kid ourselves. That estimate was deliberately low in the hopes of fabricating exceeds or meets expectations headlines for anything under 20 million, which is still a catastrophe for a $100 million studio movie. And the controversy about subtitles. Yes, if I subtitled the Spanish, I'd simply be doubling down on the English and giving English the power over the Spanish, the virtue signaling Spielberg squeaked from his gerbil cage. Yeah, let's have large chunks of the dialogue in a language which most of the audience is not going to understand. In the new movie, Spielberg and screenwriter Tony Kushner worked to correct the original musical and movie's stereotypical depictions, adding more specificity and historical context around the Puerto Rican experience and around the issues of racism and racial hostility. Such animosity first becomes evident when the Jets vandalize a mural of the Puerto Rico flag with a quotation from Pedro Albizu Campos, the leading figure of the Puerto Rican independence movement. The quote reads, La patria es valor y sacrificio, Spanish for the homeland is value and sacrifice. Once you see that and notice that the flag is the light blue flag, which is the original color of the Puerto Rican flag before the U.S. colonized Puerto Rico in 1898 after the Spanish-American War. Is there going to be a test after you watch this movie? Someone asked me on Twitter last night whether I was going to see West Side Story. Actually, I wouldn't be allowed to see it because I'm not allowed into theaters, places of entertainment, because I am a pureblood. But I wouldn't see it anyway. My late mother had attended several times, I gather, the Toronto cast production of West Side Story, and she bought the soundtrack album, which I was subjected to many, many times as a child. And I don't know. I don't know. I guess I'm inoculated against West Side Story. This is from Jim Hoft at Gateway Pundit. The Senate Democrats are expected to shelve their Build Back Better bill and move forward with their national elections bill that gives them permanent power. Josh Marshall, who is a very reliable progressive, commented, if this is true, it's a joke. They don't have the votes for any voting rights bill, so this simply means shelving BBB, period. Golly, that's a shame. Here's a story from the New York Times. North Korea executes people for watching K-pop, rights group says. Well, my comment on that is the North Koreans go too far, as always, but one has to admire their spirit. And in my own country of Canada, Canadian Blood Services recommends end to outright ban on donations from gay men. And as I always ask, what happened the last time that gay men were allowed to give blood in Canada? What happened in the United States? What happened in France? But no, we can't discriminate medically for any reason except, those horrible people who have not been vaccinated. And speaking of Canada, and I'm just going to keep hitting this as hard as I can for as long as it lasts. This is from Chris Herholt at CP24, and I think you know what's coming. Ontario reported its highest COVID-19 case count in more than 6 months Wednesday, with active cases now up about 50% in 1 week. Ontario reported 1,429 new cases Tuesday and 1,536 on Monday. The 7-day rolling average of new cases now stands at 1,514, up from 1,007 1 week ago. The Ministry of Health says 625 of Wednesday's cases involved unvaccinated people. 39 involved partially vaccinated people. The vaccination status of 98 others was not known, and 1,046 involve fully vaccinated people. Yeah. So what does that tell you? I think you can draw your own conclusions. And this is from CBC News today. Ontario announced Wednesday that it's accelerating its COVID-19 booster shot rollout over fears around the Omicron variant, with everyone 18 or older eligible to book their third vaccine dose starting Monday. The province is also shortening the interval required to wait before getting a booster from 6 months to 3 months after a second dose, and is launching a holiday testing blitz with free rapid antigen tests available as of Wednesday at pop-up sites, including malls and libraries, as well as a Liquor Control Board of Ontario stores. Nothing matters more than getting these third shots into arms, said Ford at a news conference Wednesday. Is there some famous saying about doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result? I think I've heard that. Perhaps the chat can let me know whether that is true. And I checked in on Bruce Arthur, of the Globe and Mail and his crowd over on Twitter, and they are practically screaming with anxiety. Oh my God, Doug Ford is not doing enough. I mean, what is wrong with Doug Ford? I just imagine Bruce Arthur, whenever he thinks about the booster, he says, my precious, my precious. And this is from Anthony Squazin at Bloomberg Quint. Johnson & Johnson's vaccine produced virtually no antibody protection against the Omicron coronavirus variant in a laboratory experiment, underlining the new strain's ability to get around one pillar of the body's defenses. But keep getting the jab. You know, you can never have too many jabs. I've complained in the past that the regime media has basically thrown away all of the rules. And one of the rules used to be, if one is describing a controversy, one hears from one side and one hears from the other side as well. But in terms of, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., there is only one side. Michelle Smith at Associated Press, he is the worst man in the world. The worst. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. strode onto the stage at a Southern California church, radiating Kennedy confidence and surveying the standing ovation crowd with his piercing blue Bobby Kennedy eyes. Then he launched into an anti-vaccine rant. Democrats drank the Kool-Aid, he told people assembled for a far-right conference. Boo! Branded as standing for health and freedom. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Then Kennedy hawked his book. Oh, I see he wrote a book. Not Mario Cuomo. Andrew Cuomo wrote a book about leadership in the age of COVID, and apparently he made $5.1 million from it. Do you recall the Associated Press or any other regime media outlet condemning Governor Cuomo for hawking a book? All profits, he said, would go to his charity, Children's Health Defense. While many nonprofits and businesses have struggled during the pandemic, Kennedy's anti-vaccine group has thrived. Kennedy's book is near the top of the bestseller lists and has been for weeks. And the Associated Press, the regime media, is furious. And apparently, as Children's Health Defense has worked to expand its influence, experts said it has targeted its false claims at groups that may be more prone to distrust the vaccine, including mothers and Black Americans. It's a strategy that experts worry has deadly consequences during a pandemic that has killed more than 5 million people when misinformation has been deemed a threat to public health. Wow, how many weasel words can you put in a paragraph? The death toll in the United States hit 800,000 this week, and nearly a third of those people have died since vaccines became available to all adults in the U.S. Unvaccinated people are 14 times more likely to die of COVID-19 than those that get the shot, according to the CDC. I would like to see more data on this, particularly what they call comorbidities. And apparently, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is speaking to Trump supporters. Yeah, I know. I mean, Trump supporters, no one should speak to them because they're the worst people in the world. But Kennedy is actually speaking to them. During the pandemic, Kennedy has become a near ubiquitous source of false information about COVID-19 and vaccines. Earlier this year, Kennedy was named one of the Disinformation Dozen by the Center for Countering Digital Hate, which is an organization that I had never heard of until I read this article, but doubtless is very well funded, which says he and the Children's Health Defense website are among the top spreaders of false information about vaccines online. More than 200 million Americans have gotten the COVID-19 vaccine, and serious side effects are extremely rare, according to government safety tracking. That tracking and testing in tens of thousands of people have shown that vaccines are safe and effective, at reducing the risk of serious disease and death, and that any health risks posed by the vaccine are far lower than the risks posed by the virus. The AP found links to children's defense articles all over Facebook. While many were shared as posts on the pages of fellow anti-vaccine activists, many more could be found in the comments section on pages that people turn to for reliable information, including official government Facebook pages in all 50 states and in health departments in nearly every state. Well, if you can't trust the government, then who can you trust? Children's Health Defense new movie studio released a film earlier this year called Medical Racism. Doctors and public health advocates said it was aimed at spreading misinformation and fear of vaccines within the Black community, which has been disproportionately hit by coronavirus. The movie brings up racist abuses in medicines, such as the Tuskegee experiment, when hundreds of Black men in Alabama with syphilis were left untreated to question whether the vaccine can be trusted or is necessary. Examples of racist medical practices have contributed to distrust and hesitation about vaccines among some members of the Black community. Yeah, okay. So the government decided, doctors, with the approval of the government, decided not to treat Black people with syphilis because they just wanted to see what would happen. And apparently, this has resulted in Black people being rather skeptical of the medical community. Yeah, I know. Crazy, right? Absolutely crazy. And let's go over to Vox Day's site. Boost baby boost. The NFL is requiring a third shot for all coaches and employees. The NFL is requiring players, coaches, and other team personnel to receive a COVID-19 booster by December 27th. In a memo sent to teams Monday and obtained by the Associated Press, the league said, given the increased prevalence of the virus in our communities, our experts have recommended that we implement the CDC's recommendation. Yes. On the plus side, Vox Day comments, at least NFL players haven't been collapsing on the field with heart attacks like the FIFA players. I suspect, as do many, that these NFL players are cheating, that they are saying that they were vaccinated when they have not been vaccinated. Let's see, a report from Austria. Someone writes, Vox Day, I live in the westernmost province, Vorarlberg, which has around 380,000 inhabitants. So weeks ago, the provincial government compared their residents' register with their vaccination records and sent out 66,800 letters to those who weren't on both lists, inviting them to a vaccination appointment. On the back is a list of vaccination myths. There are demonstrations every few days, and they're growing in size. At least two new political parties forming for the purpose of repealing all corona measures. The Menschenfreiheit Grundrecht, people freedom rights, already won some seats in the provincial government in Upper Austria in September. In Vorarlberg, there's also a new party, a Freie Bürgerpartei, Free Citizens Party. There are also Catholic prayer groups forming all over the country, from Vienna to little villages in the mountains, to pray the rosary for the country every Wednesday. The government's proposal threatens a system of fines for those who refuse the vaccination and the possibility of jail time for those who don't pay. As far as I could figure out, there are 160 jail beds in this province, and 87% are occupied. So the government is threatening 66,000 people with jail when they have 21 spots to put them in. There's a certain drug which I don't believe I'm allowed to mention. Let's just say that it begins with an I, okay? Andrew Hill, PhD, is a senior visiting research fellow in pharmacology at Liverpool University. He is also an advisor for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the Clinton Foundation. As a researcher for the World Health Organization evaluating the drug which can't be mentioned, Hill wielded enormous influence over international guidance for the drug's use. Hill had previously authored an analysis of this drug as a treatment for COVID-19 that found the drug overwhelmingly effective. On January 6, 2021, he testified enthusiastically before the National Institutes of Health COVID-19 treatment guidelines panel in support of the forbidden drugs use. Within a month, however, Hill found himself in what he describes as a tricky situation. Under pressure from his funding sponsors, Hill then published an unfavorable study. Ironically, he used the same sources as in the original study, only the conclusions had changed. Shortly before he published, Dr. Tess Laurie, director of the evidence-based medicine consultancy in Bath, England, and one of the world's leading medical research analysts, contacted Hill via Zoom and recorded the call. Laurie had learned of his new position and reached out to try to rectify the situation. In a remarkable exchange, a transcript of which appears on pages 137 to 143 in Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s book, Hill admitted his manipulated study would likely delay the uptake of the forbidden drug in the UK and the United States, but said he hoped his doing so would only set the life-saving drug's acceptance back by about 6 weeks, after which he was willing to give his support for its use. How about that? Huh? How about that? And, oh, yes, some unfortunate video of Dr. Anthony Fauci from, March of last year has surfaced. There is Dr. Fauci and Mark Zuckerberg, who, of course, is a COVID-19 expert. In the interview, Dr. Fauci opens up the possibility that the COVID-19 vaccine could be making people more likely to be infected by the virus. Quote, "This would not be the first time if it happened that a vaccine that looked good in initial safety actually made people worse. There was the history of the respiratory syncytial vaccine in children, which paradoxically made the children worse. One of the HIV vaccines that we tested some years ago actually made individuals more likely to get infected," unquote. And yes, finally from Vox Day, the English Premier League, which is football, is at risk of being shut down because so many of its vaccinated players have come down with COVID. Yes, the healthiest men on earth, all over the world, are falling to the ground, falling to the pitch, clutching their heart. But no one knows what could possibly be responsible for this. Miasma, as I have said, or as one of you in the chat suggested, an imbalance in the humors. Tucker Carlson again. This is the definition of a manufactured threat. There has never been a more selfish and short-sighted leadership class. And someone from the Netherlands was on a plane, and the plane was stopped. And military police stormed the aircraft and dragged a man from his seat. So, of course, it's to assume at first that terrorism had just been averted. The passenger must have been trying to blow up the plane with a shoe bomb or something. But no, that's not what this is. This man is not a terrorist. He's something worse than that. He has violated COVID restrictions. He's a corona criminal. Okay, you think you're trying to be reasonable here? A man with COVID should not be on a commercial aircraft spreading the virus to everyone else. And, of course, that's fair. But here's the thing. This man doesn't have COVID. He was tested right before he got on the airplane, and no trace of the virus was found. So why in the world is he being hauled off the flight by armed men? Well, here's why. Because the government has determined that based on his travel history, which they have been tracking, he might someday get COVID. Therefore, in the name of public health, he is being forcibly detained, not for something he has done, but for something that he potentially might do inadvertently. And for that, this man is headed to a COVID camp known euphemistically as a quarantine hotel. But he's not going to be a guest in this hotel. He'll be a prisoner. Oh, and Tucker Carlson mentions Canada. Canadian citizens are now banned from traveling by airplane, train, or ship unless they can prove they've been injected with the shot that Justin Trudeau demands they take. This is a big change. For centuries, Canadians have had the right to travel within their own country. In fact, it's guaranteed. Mobility rights are guaranteed in the laughingly named Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Back to Tucker Carlson. In fact, Canadians had that right before Canada was even a nation, and they don't have it anymore. If they try it, they'll end up like the guy at the Amsterdam airport in a prison disguised as a public health facility. Keep in mind, though, We must follow the science. This is all for our own good. Chris Menahan at Information Liberation. The FDA has approved boosters for kids 16 to 17 years of age. It did so without testing the boosters on kids 16 to 17 years of age. Yeah, because I guess that's what we do now. Another story from the same source. From Disclosed TV, just in Germany, booster injections are now offered as early as 4 weeks after the last vaccination in the federal state of North Rhine-Westphalia. Oh, 4 weeks. So what can we deduce from that? I think it's fairly obvious. And again, citizens in Israel are being told to prepare for endless boosters. Professor Arnon Afek said, and he is an Israeli Health Ministry Vaccination Advisory Committee member, those who think we won't need to take more boosters are wrong. We will need to take the 4th shot, the 5th shot, the 6th shot, and the 7th shot. Because vaccines work. Remember that, folks. Despite anything that you may have heard or anything, that you might pull out of what I've been saying. No. Vaccines work. From Paul Boyes at Breitbart, the search engine empire Google has issued a vaccine mandate to its employees, telling them to get both shots by January 18th, or else face a series of disciplinary actions that could eventually result in their termination. Okay. And here's another tweet. Hang on, just let me bring this up. Let's just take a second. And almost there. Okay. Here we go. Yes, again, Dr. Fauci opens up the possibility that the COVID-19 vaccine could be making people more likely to be infected by the virus. Yes, and there's Mark Zuckerberg on the left, looking, well, robotic, barely human. Quote, if you vaccinate someone and they make an antibody response and then they get exposed and infected, does the response that you induce enhance the infection and make it worse? The only way you'll know that is if you do an extended study, not on volunteers, but on the public, unquote. Nothing at all disturbing about that. No. It's like Nancy Pelosi once infamously said, if you want to know what's in the bill, you'll have to vote for it. Oh, wait. This is from Disclosed.tv. Barcelona star Sergio Aguero, 33 years old, bursts into tears as he confirms retirement from football due to a heart condition. Again, another victim of the miasma that is afflicting sports stars around the world. And this is from Viaz at Mort, W-E-A-Z. Japanese study cites under 20s have a 7 times higher mortality risk from the Pfizer vaccine than the COVID virus it is supposed to save them from. Yes, this is a study from Japan, which came out in September 2021. And Viaz comments, actual figure could be 5 to 40 times higher due to 28-day reporting period creative accounting. Let nothing that I've said tonight persuade you in any other direction except that you need to get jabbed and jabbed and jabbed again, because vaccines are our savior. And sad Muslim lady, Jacinda Ardern. In a sane world, this woman would be a kindergarten teacher, but instead she's a prime minister of New Zealand. This is from Francis Martel at Breitbart. Jacinda Ardern joked during a recent broadcast that Tinder liaisons of up to 25 people could continue Despite the nation's authoritarian coronavirus restrictions, the fact-checking website Polygraph confirmed Tuesday. Ardern's declaration occurred on the New Zealand program 7 Sharp, December 3rd, but resurfaced this week after the Russian media outlet RT reported on it, claiming Ardern had legalized orgies, despite some of the world's most repressive policies regarding freedom of movement and association in response to coronavirus. Polygraph, a product of Voice of America, which is a government propaganda arm, rated the RT report false because Ardern did not use the word orgy, but instead approved liaisons, up to 25. The video circulating on social media this week shows Ardern and the 7 Sharp hosts laughing while discussing the traffic light system, which ranks the safety of every place in the country from the Chinese coronavirus pandemic based on vaccination rates and social distancing protocol. Quote, I can confirm that Tinder liaisons have reopened. It's not strictly embedded in the traffic light system, but it is a given, up to 25 actually in a red area, unquote. If you watch the video, you will find that the female co-host of this show realizes that this is disgusting, and she cuts off the conversation. She effectively cuts off the Prime Minister of New Zealand and saying, no, we're not going to talk anymore about this. Calliope Ryder on Twitter says, yeah, but did your PM go onto national television to officially announce that checks notes orgies can resume? And someone called Hazel is Online, Canadian, responded, no, but my government recommended glory holes for COVID safe. Yeah, okay. Yes, I've mentioned this before, and it's not made up. I'm not going to speak any more about this. You can look up what that means. I don't recommend it. When I first heard of the existence of this practice, I could not believe it. No one would be insane enough to do that. But apparently it is very dear to a gay culture. And this is from Joshua Klein at Breitbart. Republicans are pro-death, as well as anti-science and anti-rational thought, according to a recent Vanity Fair piece that blasts them for being all in on eradicating Biden's vaccine mandates for businesses, while charging they will persist until every American has the right to get COVID-19. A Vanity Fair essay published Wednesday, penned by politics correspondent Bess Levin, entitled, Behold, the many ways pro-death Republicans are going after Biden's vaccine mandates, began by accusing Republicans of opposing both science and rational thinking. Yeah, okay. Meanwhile, in Germany, you can get a booster shot 4 weeks after your second shot. But you got to get the jabs. You just got to. They work. They work. They work. And the more, the better. This is from James Delling-Poll at Breitbart. Britain's increasingly ugly, bought and paid for tabloid media is ramping up its war against so-called vaccine refuseniks. Again, are we living in the Soviet Union now? And it is starting to get really vicious and unpleasant. Here is Andrew Neil, former editor of Rupert Murdoch's Sunday Times, former BBC presenter, and current chairman of The Spectator, deploying his prestige and influence to argue in the Daily Mail that the unvaccinated should be treated like second-class citizens. In a piece charmingly headlined, It's Time to Punish Britain's 5 million vaccine refuseniks, he enthuses about the idea of excluding the unvaccinated from all but the basic means of survival. Quote, under Plan B, vaccine passports will be required for entry to nightclubs and at major gatherings at large venues. It would not be difficult to extend them French style to other public places, including restaurants, pubs, and bars, and non-essential shops. Even the unvaxxed need food and medicines. It would give those of us who've done the right thing more protection, and for those who've not, pause for thought. Okay. And an interesting story from theblaze.com about that drug whose name can't be mentioned. Judge holds hospital in contempt of court for refusing drug that can be mentioned to COVID patient on ventilator, ignoring court order. They're really determined to stop the use of this drug. See, sad story from Vanessa Chalmers at the Sun of London. An essential worker who was told her 5-month-long cough was probably due to COVID found out the truth was much worse. Chloe Girardier, 23, claimed she was initially denied an in-person doctor's appointment, only to later discover she had cancer. The care home worker from England said, "It's so hard to get appointments. They kept telling me I wasn't eligible for an urgent appointment because it was just a cough. There were multiple times people asked if I had tested for COVID, and it was frustrating because other illnesses still exist, and a cough isn't just a sign of COVID. I felt people would stare at me when I coughed, and people instantly assumed I must have COVID." Chloe, who worked in the aviation industry before COVID hit, believes she had contracted a cold in July after experiencing a chesty cough. After struggling to get a doctor's appointment, she said she was given antibiotics, inhalers, and acid reflux tablets to no avail. 7 doctor's appointments later, Chloe noticed she was losing weight. She demanded a chest x-ray to discover what was causing her continuous cough. It was then that doctors found a mass on Chloe's chest measuring 4¼ inches, leading to a cancer diagnosis December 3rd. Chloe was told she had Hodgkin's lymphoma, a rare cancer of the lymphatic system that causes symptoms such as a persistent cough, itchy skin, weight loss, night sweats, and a fever. Medics have scheduled her in for intensive chemotherapy on December 20th, just a few days before Christmas. "I'm putting a complaint into my doctors because I think I've been fobbed off for a long time due to my age," Chloe said. "I had heard about this kind of cancer before because I knew someone who had it, and luckily it's one of the easiest cancers to treat, so I'm confident I'll make a full recovery." Well, many of the hundreds of thousands of Britons who have